Hello, I'm Lt.D, and welcome to part 1 of my Mass Effect 3 LP. Now, this isn't intended to be an exhaustive playthrough. I just want to highlight a couple of the more interesting things about Mass Effect 3. It's a controversial game with lots to talk about, and just as a warning, I may not agree with you on most of it. Most of the parts you think are bad, I think are great, and the bits that you like, I probably don't. So, let's begin. So Mass Effect has a kind of signature opening sequence. Two people talking in voiceover, some expository text, and then the title card. In Mass Effect 1, it was Anderson and Udina talking about Spectre candidates. In Mass Effect 2, Miranda and the Elusive Man talking about the consequences of the Battle of the Citadel. Mass Effect 3's opening is no different. As the capstone of the trilogy, a lot of the game is some kind of callback to the previous entries in the series. Now in this playthrough, I am largely going to assume that you know what happened in the previous games.
God help us all.
Now, Earth's been kind of a fan target since the first game. People have wanted to see what happens to Earth in Mass Effect's future, and we finally do so in Mass Effect 3. It actually plays a central role in the plot, and in many characters' motivations. It's very much a change in focus from the previous games, less about exploring new parts of the galaxy, and more about dealing with what we already have. Here we see Shepard, our main character and player avatar. Now, I've chosen the default face, based on the model of Mark Vanderloo, for recognition's sake.
Commander.
James Vega is a new character to the series. He's intended to act as an audience surrogate for new players, able to ask all the obvious questions. Of course, after introducing him, BioWare immediately writes him out at the beginning.
Now. Anderson? Admiral?
You look good, Shepard.
Which is fair enough, because Anderson is a far more important character. He's Shepard's mentor and predecessor, a father figure in many ways. Anderson was the original human Spectre candidate, the original Normandy captain. He's kind of like a main character that didn't quite make it in, you know? Funnily enough, in the very first draft of Mass Effect, the main character was named Captain Anderson.
You know we're not ready if it is then. Not by a long shot.
Tell that to the Defense Committee.
So we have this premise where Shepard is grounded on Earth due to their actions in the previous games, and is only brought out because the Reapers are coming. Now, I'd like to try an experiment here. Try listening to the dialogue in this and the next few scenes, and think about what we find out about the Reapers just from this sequence.
Is that why they grounded me? Took away my ship?
You know that's not true. When you blew up the Batarian relay, hundreds of thousands of Batarians died.
It was that or let the Reapers walk through our back door.
I'd know that, Shepard. And so does the committee. If it wasn't for that, you'd have been court-martialed and left to rot in the brig.
That, in your good word?
Yeah, I trust you, Shepard. And so does the committee.
I'm just a soldier, Anderson. I'm no politician.
I don't need you to be either. I just need you to do whatever the hell it takes to help us stop the Reapers.
They're expecting you to, Admiral.
Good luck in there, Shepard.
Anderson?
So if Vega is the audience surrogate for new players, then the Vermeer survivor, either Ashley or Kaiden, is perhaps a surrogate for older players who started with Mass Effect 1. And as with Vega, she's also immediately sidelined.
Come on.
You know the commander?
I used to.
So the original plan for Mass Effect 3's beginning was a trial. Shepard was going to be court-martialed for what they had done in Mass Effect 2, which potentially included consorting with criminals and mercenaries, aiding a paramilitary terrorist organisation, mass genocide. This was ostensibly cut because it might alienate new players. Now, personally, I can't quite see it. A trial would be an excellent way to bring new players up to speed on what happened previously. It's a built-in excuse to re-explain things that the characters should already know. Also an opportunity to play on the meta-narrative of the two previous games. You know, you got the clean-cut Mass Effect 1 as a defence, where Shepard's cast as this galactic policeman, and then you got this darker, meaner sequel that could work as a prosecution case, with its more ethically ambiguous premise. It'd also be a good way to integrate a mechanic for non-importing players to decide what had happened in their previous games. Kind of like the conversation with Atton Rand at the beginning of Knights of the Old Republic 2, in which you could decide the gender and alignment of Revan, the previous game's main character. That said, the beginning is pretty anemic as it is, and a long trial sequence could easily bog down what is already quite a slow and laborious opening.
Anything less, and they've already won.
That's it? That's our plan?
Admiral, we've lost contact with Luna Base.
The moon? They couldn't be that close already.
How'd they get past our defenses?
Sir, UK headquarters has a visual.
Now, a few minutes back, I asked you to think about what we find out about the Reapers from the dialogue in this sequence. It's not a lot, is it? The dialogue here is incredibly vague and generic, probably because of the rewrite from the trial. It's full of, don't know, not sure, can't be, and it doesn't work. This isn't the time for BioWare to play coy. The imminent invasion is supposed to spark off the whole story, and it leaves something that should be very dramatic, an apocalypse by godlike aliens, and turns it into a damp squib. The best bit, I reckon, is when they say, let's go now to our London base for a visual, and there is no visual. It's just a soldier screaming into the camera and then static, and then we see it on cable news straight after. Why? Why this bait and switch? What's weird is that the original cut of this scene did actually show Reapers in London.
Oh my god.
Luckily, things get a bit more interesting when the Reapers actually arrive. I want to take a moment here just to compare and contrast Mass Effect 3's opening with a couple of others, which I've linked in this video's description. First up is the Mass Effect 2 intro sequence. I've put up a version with some text commentary that you can watch. The second is much shorter, only about a minute long. It's old and mostly audio, but I think it does a better job than Mass Effect 3 of conveying the concept of aliens attack Earth. And believe it or not, it's actually the Quake 2 intro from all the way back in 1997. So go ahead and watch that now. I think just the audio there, the voice, the sound, does a stronger job of conveying the concept of aliens invaded Earth, massive casualties, you know, the backstory you need to hunt down cyborgs from another planet, than Mass Effect 3 does here. And that's kind of sad, really.
Here, take this. We've got to get moving. This is Admiral Anderson. Report it, anyone. Lieutenant Commander Williams, is that you? What's your status? I can't raise the Normandy. You'll have to contact me. We'll meet you at the landing zone. Anderson out.
So here we finally get some visual information about the Reapers. We get to see the Reapers towering across the landscape, some of the ground and air troops, a bit of physical destruction. Unfortunately, it's probably just as weak as the dialogue was. This section also serves as a very basic gameplay tutorial, and this is something I'd like to talk about in more detail in the next video.
Take a running jump. It's farther than it looks. Come on, let's go. have to go this way. Looks clear, let's go. Lieutenant Commander, you read me. I'm patching in Shepard.
We're almost to the Normandy. I've got Lieutenant Vega with me, but we're taking heavy fire.
We're about 5 minutes out. Say again? Commander! Husks! Take him out! Shoot him! I'm out of ammo. Come on, we gotta move. Have to take these things out the old-fashioned way. Don't let him grab you. Gotta find a way out of here. Watch it! Through this way.
BioWare's never been that great on subtlety, and the next scene is kind of an example of why. This child is our stand-in for everyone on Earth, all the civilians, all the bystanders and innocents. That's fine, that's fair enough. Works well, everyone gets that. The first line, okay.
Everyone's dying.
Yeah, I can buy. You know, that sounds right. That sounds like something a child would say.
Come here. I need to get you someplace safe. Take my hand.
The second line,
You can't help me.
no, not so much.
Shepard!
But it's BioWare out and out stating that this person and the people they represent can't be helped. You know, almost like they're stepping out through the fourth wall and talking directly to us, the audience. And BioWare's going to try and hammer this point home a lot over the course of this final game.
This is a goddamn mess.
Anderson takes on a bit more importance in this game than in previous ones. In the original Mass Effect, he was just the old guard, a former captain, an ally, a mentor, but not someone directly involved with most of the story. In the sequel, he disappears from the narrative while the Elusive Man essentially takes over his role. Now, in this game, we spend a lot more time with Anderson and develop the relationship a lot more. Even in this sequence now, though he's technically tied to a desk, Anderson's still leading the way through the rubble, doing Shepard's strategic thinking for them, and literally at one point saving Shepard's life. As an older male figure that has guided and inspired Shepard, he's very much a father figure, and that's hugely important. Don't forget that.
You sure about that? No, but you were a Council Spectre. That has to count for something. Gotcha!
Thanks. I owe you one.
More than one. Grab some ammo. Reload, let's keep moving.
Just want to talk a bit about actual visuals here. The low quality assets don't help, obviously, but you can overcome low asset quality with good art direction. And this sequence doesn't have that. The colours aren't great, it's largely blue and grey, kind of all mixed up together. Only the red Reaper beams stand out, and even then they're still quite dull and muted. Even the explosions seem to blur into the background.
Lieutenant Commander, Ashley! Damn it.
Also, I appreciate that BioWare is Canadian and all, but I don't think a Vancouver, Seattle megacity was the best choice of setting for depicting the invasion of Earth. There's nothing really truly iconic to show that, yes, this is Earth getting all invaded. All we see is a series of skyscraper roofs and streets getting blown up. Basically a series of grey boxes, and there's no real emotional resonance. Now, compared to other scenes of alien invasion from other media, like Independence Day, for example, I mean, you can probably already see it, can't you? Picturing that bit where the White House blows up? It's iconic. It's a distinctive visual that you remember because the White House is a global landmark. Think back to the Quake 2 intro that I showed earlier. That list of cities that the aliens had glassed, that's meaningful. Maybe I'm just ignorant, maybe perhaps I should have realised, oh, that's Stanley Park or something. I'm just not sure of the wisdom of direction that sets what should be a dramatic, memorable sequence in the middle of a city that built a television industry on its ability to look like other, more interesting locations. I mean, this city location BioWare has created here, it's just not very interesting to look at. It's like the example of a generic city. It's everywhere, it's every city, but also means it's nowhere, it's no city at all. And that has a corresponding effect on the emotional response we have when we see it get destroyed. It's not a real city, so who cares? No one actually lives there.
What the hell are those things? Shepard, over here. I found a radio. Normandy, this is Anderson. Do you read?
Admiral, what's your location?
By a downed gunship in the harbor. I'm activating its distress beacon. Send support. We've got wounded down here. Lieutenant! Damn it! I lost the signal.
Let's hope that beacon does its job.
And fast, we've got company.
Gentlemen.
About time.
Let's go.
I will say that this final bit here with the Normandy does work quite well. I do quite like this bit. One thing that this intro has done quite well as well is the physicality. Shepard gets thrown across rooms, dropped down sides of buildings, and here, running onto the Normandy. The game as a whole has a very strong physical presence that didn't really exist in the previous games.
Shepard!
Come on!
I'm not going. You saw those men back there. There's a million more like them, and they need a leader.
We're in this fight together, Anderson.
It's a fight we can't win. Not without help. We need every species and all their ships to even have a chance at defeating the Reapers.
The other thing I quite like, I'm quite a big believer in openings and introductions, setting the scene for the rest of a text. Not just, or not, not necessarily even literally, this is how it starts, but maybe just in an emotional, tonal, or symbolic sense. My go-to example is the film Men in Black, where a comedy about chasing a bug all over New York and the chaos it causes opens with a comedic scene about chasing a bug all over the highway, showing the chaos that it causes. It allows the audience to set their expectations appropriately. And this last bit here does that perfectly.